Hey there guys, Conceptual Concept 6.9 here, and today I have something a little bit more impromptu. It's primarily because the video I had planned to come out hit quite a large snag. Anyone who's been following knows I got a Palmetto AK-102, and well, let's just say I had a catastrophic failure. Now, I do want to note for all the people who may think I'm just hating on Palmetto and ragging on them, telling you how terrible they are, I really wanted this gun to work, kind of like their ammunition as well. I actually invested pretty heavily in this build after the initial 200 rounds fired because, well, I was hopeful because it was running really well. So got it all kitted up. That way I could plan to do some serious training with it, put some serious rounds through it for the 800 round review. But I'm going to go ahead and plug in the failure here, and then we're going to have a conversation not so much about Palmetto, but about trusting your gear. And regardless of what anyone says on the internet, actually putting it through its paces for yourself. So, I just had my first light primer strike with the AK-102. We'll see if it continues. I was just zeroing the gun. About 220 rounds in so far. So, we'll see if this is a continual problem. I have heard light primer strikes are an issue, and I might have to take the bolt apart later to just check for any obstructions. So as you can see pretty clearly in the video, not a full 5.56 casing came out of the side of the receiver. It looked almost like a pistol casing. The other half of that casing is still in the chamber. I took it to my gunsmith. I'm having him check headspace. It might, on the off chance, be an ammunition related issue. It was factory new XM193, so I really doubt it. I've never had any issues with it before, but might be the problem. So we're going to see from there. Now, some people might say that I am absolutely hating on Palmetto. Nothing's further from the truth. I actually really want these guns to be good, and I'm trying to keep completely unbiased during this review. As you saw in the video, it's pretty hard to argue with. It's also pretty hard to fake that. So I do want to add the only other firearm I've had an issue with this last year is my Beretta 80X, and I am a huge Beretta shill because Die Hard will never die. And I definitely want to add that it is an amazing Christmas movie, and you can fight me on that. So the Beretta has also had a catastrophic issue as well with the safety, which I'll get into in the full review. I'm not going to do it right now. But this really leads into a different conversation I really want to have with you guys, which is actually testing your gear. Even higher quality manufacturers like Daniel Defense, BCM, Arsenal, all those things definitely can have lemons, and so you definitely want to run your gun. Now, I understand that putting several thousand rounds through your firearm might be a little bit of a stretch for a lot of people financially because things are expensive, naturally. So that's where paying more usually gets you better QC and gets you closer to a guarantee of a reliable rifle now or firearm. Now, that's not saying that it is 100%. Again, the Beretta 80X is not a cheap firearm. In pistol standards, it is a couple $100 to $300 more than a Glock, and a Glock is pretty much the gold standard. But I did have a pretty catastrophic issue with that. So really, even the higher end manufacturers can still have lemons. So again, I understand it's difficult to put several thousand rounds through your gun. So where do we really start? Where do we really start to trust our firearm? It's through the break-in period, and it's just something you depend your life on. Because I don't think, regardless what firearm you buy, you should just buy it, never shoot it, and think it's going to be your end-of-day gun. I think that's just unrealistic, regardless the manufacturer. Personally, I really like the idea of 500 to 1,000 rounds before you really start to trust the firearm. I'd really like to see it closer to 1,000, but generally, once something's working, it just works. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. People have catastrophic failures 15 100 to 2,000 rounds in. I know a regular guy had a PSA AK-103 that tanked at 1,500 rounds. So those things definitely do happen, but I feel 500 to 1,000 is a pretty good spot to gauge whether something's going to be reliable moving forward. Now, as for trusting YouTubers with their reviews on different firearms on your buyer's guide to buy a gun, I think so long as you find a fairly trustworthy one, most of the YouTubers on here are, in my opinion, trustworthy. I'm not completely cynical like a bunch of different guys on the internet. But regardless whether you trust them or not, each individual rifle is its own animal. Now there's QC, there's materials, all those things go into the base of having a good firearm. So assuming you're buying a good firearm from a reputable brand, typically it will be fairly solid, and you really it's really your choice on what you want. And YouTubers do a good job of representing how their rifle performed and overall, reliability with it. However, your rifle is its own animal. You can't guarantee that yours is not a lemon, as pessimistic as that sounds, because QC, even the best, can miss something. Again, that Beretta, I think Beretta has pretty good QC, but that Beretta had some issues. So, while I haven't seen any negative reviews from any other YouTuber, I genuinely believe that they are being honest. They haven't had any issues with the Beretta ADX. My personal example did, and yours might as well. So just keep an eye out for that. I think it's really important to test and vet your gear personally, and not really just trust 100% what someone else says. Never shoot the gun or shoot one or two magazines and say, hey, this is end of days reliable, great gun. Now, the other end of that is buying from a more budget-oriented manufacturer like Palmetto. I am not as cynical with Palmetto as everyone else. I do believe they do make quality firearms, assuming everything is put together right and QC is done. However, you have to understand that these budget firearms, like Palmetto, like a bunch of other different manufacturers, they have to cut corners somewhere. And QC is one of the areas a lot of these manufacturers do, especially at the volumes Palmetto is pushing through. Now, my GF5 is nearing 1,000 rounds, my 7.62 by 39. Haven't been shooting at a crazy amount over the last, what's it been, 8 months, but it's nearing that 1,000 round mark. I'm starting to be pretty confident that thing shoots pretty well. So my Palmetto GF5, so far I love it. I have no problems with it. Also, Battlefield Las Vegas converted one GF3 to full auto, and the barrel burnt out before any other parts breakage. So again, I do think they're a little more solid than a lot of the skeptical different YouTubers think. But you do have an even more important responsibility as someone who might choose that to be your end-of-day rifle, the thing you trust your rifle, your life, and your family's life to. So I would be much more diligent on checking head spacing, on making sure everything's working properly, on actually putting quite a few rounds through your rifle, primarily because you want to make sure it works. And that QC issue rears its ugly head when you deal with a company that is pushing out thousands and thousands and thousands of rifles a day. So definitely something to consider there. As a responsible citizen or a prepared citizen, it is really your responsibility to make sure your kid is up to snuff. So I definitely recommend taking the time and making sure you do exactly that. I really don't want to harp too much more on this because I don't think there's much more I need to say, but really consider, have you put the rounds through your rifle? Have you put the time behind your rifle or pistol to really be able to trust it? Because even Glock has lemons. Everyone does. And so it's important to really get out there, spend some time with your gun, and really make sure it's solid. Past that, I really don't have anything else for you. Just make sure to go outside, touch grass, and eat ass. All right, guys?